What if I told you that $500,000 sitting in the bank might not be enough to retire on? And what if I also told you that with the right setup, that same $500,000 could pay you a salary every single year without you ever touching the original pile of cash? Those two things sound like they contradict each other, but they don't. And by the end of this video, you'll understand exactly why and exactly how to make it work.
Right now, millions of Australians are being told the same story. Save hard, park your money in the bank, and live off the interest. Sounds simple, right? The problem is that story's about 30 years out of date, and the people still telling it, they're the ones profiting while you stay confused. Stick around because today we're going to pull back the curtain on what it actually takes to live off $500,000 in Australia in 2025.
What the banks don't want you to figure out, and the smarter strategies that everyday Australians are already using. Before we get into the good stuff, quick disclaimer. This is for educational purposes only and not financial advice. Everyone's situation is different, so please talk to a licensed financial advisor before making any big money decisions. Okay, so let's talk about why the mainstream advice is failing ordinary Australians.
The classic advice you'll hear from your parents, your bank manager, maybe even your accountant is this: save up a lump sum, put it in a savings account or term deposit, and live off the interest. Back in the early 1990s, that actually worked. Interest rates on savings accounts in Australia were sitting above 10%, so $500,000 earning 10%, that's $50,000 a year. Not bad.
But today, the average Australian savings account is paying somewhere between 1 and 5%, depending on where you look and how many hoops you jump through to qualify for the bonus rate. So $500,000 in a standard savings account at 2%, that's just $10,000 a year. That's $833 a month in Australia in 2025. You can barely cover rent in regional Queensland with that, let alone Sydney or Melbourne. And here's the kicker. While your savings account pays you 2%, the banks are taking that same money and lending it out as mortgages at 6%. They're making triple what they're paying you, using your money. This is not an accident. It's the system working exactly as designed, for them, not for you. So the question isn't just, can I live off $500,000? The real question is, how do I make $500,000 work hard enough that I don't have to?
That's what we're going to break down right now. 5 strategies from the boring and safe to the ones that actually move the needle. Let's start with the basics. Strategy number 1, high interest savings accounts and term deposits. This is the one everyone already knows, but most people are doing it wrong, so it's worth covering properly. A term deposit is basically when you agree to lock your money away with a bank for a fixed period, say 6 months or 12 months, and in return, they pay you a higher interest rate. Right now in Australia, some of the better term deposit rates from institutions like ING, Macquarie, or some of the credit unions are sitting around 5% for 12 months. Not amazing, but it's real, it's guaranteed, and it's dead simple.
So on $500,000 at 5%, that's $25,000 a year, or just over $2,000 a month. It's a start, but it's still not what most of us would call comfortable in Australia. The trap with term deposits is inflation. If inflation's running at 3 or 4% and you're earning 5%, your real gain, your actual buying power increase, is only 1 or 2%. You're barely keeping up. So think of strategy 1 as your foundation, your emergency buffer, the boring but safe layer.
Strategy number 2, dividend investing through the ASX. Now we're getting somewhere. The Australian share market, the ASX, is genuinely one of the best places in the world for income investors, and most Australians don't fully realise this. Here's why. Australia has a system called franking credits. Don't switch off, I'll make it simple.
When Australian companies pay dividends,
That's the regular cash payments they make to shareholders. Those companies have already paid tax on the profits. The franking credit system means you, as the investor, get a rebate or credit for that tax already paid, so you don't get taxed twice. In plain English, your dividend income from Australian shares often comes with a tax bonus attached. This makes Australian dividends more valuable than dividends from US or UK companies.
Now, the big four banks, Commonwealth, Westpac, ANZ, NAB, plus companies like BHP, Telstra and Woolworths have historically paid dividend yields of between 4% and 7%, some years even higher. So, if you invested $500,000 across a diversified basket of ASX dividend shares and averaged a 5% yield, that's $25,000 a year in cash dividends alone. Then add back the franking credits and your effective yield could be closer to 7%. That's $35,000 a year.
And here's the beautiful part. If those companies grow over time, your dividends grow too. Your income isn't frozen the way a term deposit is. It can actually rise with the cost of living. The risk? Share prices go up and down. If you panic and sell during a crash, you lock in losses. But if you're investing for income and holding long-term, short-term price swings matter a lot less than you think. Strategy number 3, ETFs, the lazy genius move.
If picking individual shares sounds stressful or complicated, there's a simpler version. An ETF, Exchange Traded Fund, is basically a basket of shares bundled together. You buy one thing and you own a tiny piece of dozens or even hundreds of companies. For Australian income investors, ETFs like Vanguard's VHY, that stands for Vanguard High Yield, or SPDR's SYI, focus specifically on high dividend-paying Australian companies. You get the diversification without the homework. These ETFs have historically yielded somewhere in the 4 to 6% range. On $500,000, that's $20,000 to $30,000 per year, with very low management fees, sometimes as low as 0.25% per year. Compare that to an actively managed fund, where someone in a suit charges you 1 to 2% per year to supposedly beat the market, which most of them fail to do consistently, and suddenly the ETF looks even smarter. There's also the option of international ETFs. Think Vanguard VGS, which gives you exposure to global companies like Apple, Microsoft, Amazon. The yields are lower, usually 1 to 2%, but the growth potential is higher. We'll come back to why that matters in a moment. Strategy number 4, property, but not the way most Australians think about it. When most Australians hear property investment, they think buy a house, rent it out, become a landlord. And sure, that works, but it also means tenants, maintenance, property managers, and having most of your $500,000 tied up in one single asset. There's a cleaner version of property income called a REIT, Real Estate Investment Trust. Think of it like an ETF, but instead of owning shares in companies, you own a slice of real physical property, shopping centres, office buildings, industrial warehouses, without ever being a landlord.
On the ASX, REITs like Goodman Group, Scentre Group, that's the Westfield shopping centres, and Charter Hall have paid dividends ranging from 3% to 6% annually. So you could allocate a portion of your $500,000 to REITs and generate property-linked income without a mortgage, without a property manager, and without a 2 a.m. call about a broken hot water system. Strategy number 5, the bucket system. How to combine everything and actually make it sustainable.
This is the strategy that ties everything together, and it's the one almost no one explains in plain language. The bucket system is simple. You divide your $500,000 into 3 buckets, each one doing a different job. Bucket 1 is your safety bucket. This holds about 1 to 2 years' worth of living expenses in cash, a high-interest savings account,
or a short-term term deposit. This is the money you live off right now. It never touches the share market. For most Australians, comfortable living expenses might be around $50,000 to $60,000 per year. So bucket one holds maybe $80,000 to $100,000. That's your peace of mind money. Bucket two is your income bucket. This is the bulk of your money, maybe $250,000 to $300,000, invested in ASX dividend shares, ETFs like VHY and REITs. Its job is to produce regular cash income that refills bucket one as you spend it. Bucket three is your growth bucket. The remaining $100,000 to $150,000 goes into higher growth investments, global ETFs like VGS, maybe some Australian growth shares, maybe even a small allocation to something like listed investment companies. Its job isn't income, it's to grow, to beat inflation, to make sure that in 15 years your $500,000 hasn't shrunk in real terms. This is how your money survives long enough to outlive you.
The magic of the bucket system is that when share markets crash, and they will crash, that's just how markets work, you're not forced to sell. Bucket one keeps you fed, bucket two keeps generating income, and bucket three just waits. Let's now talk about something most Australians with $500,000 are not thinking about, and should be: super. If you're 60 or over and you have $500,000 sitting outside of super, here's a move worth knowing about. You can contribute that money into your superannuation fund, and once you're in pension phase, drawing it down, all the earnings inside super are tax-free, zero tax. That means the same dividend income, the same ETF distributions, the same REIT payouts, all of it earned inside your super fund in pension phase, goes straight to you, tax-free.
Now, if you're not yet 60, if you're younger and building toward that $500,000, the super conversation is still important. Your contributions grow in a low-tax environment of 15%. That's compounding quietly in the background while your outside investments do their thing. Okay, so let's zoom out and look at what a realistic income picture actually looks like for someone with $500,000 using a combined strategy. Say you split your $500,000 roughly like this: $80,000 in a high-interest savings account, $220,000 in ASX dividend ETFs, $100,000 in REITs, and $100,000 in a global growth ETF. Your savings account might earn around 4%. That's about $3,200 per year. Your ASX dividend ETF at 5.5%, that's around $12,100 per year. Your REITs at 5%, another $5,000 per year. And your growth ETF adds maybe 1.5% in distributions, $1,500 per year. Add those up and you're looking at roughly $21,800 per year from distributions alone. That's before franking credits. Add the franking credits on the Australian shares and you could realistically push that to $26,000 or $27,000 per year. Now, is $26,000 enough to live on in Australia? For most people, no, not comfortably. But here's where the strategy gets powerful. First, if this money's inside super in pension phase, a lot of that income becomes tax-free, which means the effective value of $26,000 tax-free is similar to earning $35,000 or more as a regular salary. Second, most Australians in retirement also qualify for at least a part pension from Centrelink, which can add another $15,000 to $20,000 per year, depending on your assets and relationship status. Third, your growth bucket is compounding quietly in the background. Over 10 years, a $100,000 investment growing at 8% per year doesn't just stay at $100,000. It grows to over $215,000. That's extra fuel you can access later if you need to top up your income. All right, let's pull this all together because I want to give you a clear picture of what we've actually covered today.
The myth is that $500,000 in a bank savings account will fund your retirement. At today's rates, it won't. It'll give you maybe $10,000 to $25,000 a year before tax, and inflation will quietly eat it alive year after year. The smarter move is to build a diversified income engine using a combination of dividend shares, ETFs, REITs, and the bucket system that pays you a regular income while protecting and even growing the underlying capital.
And if you're eligible, using superannuation as your tax wrapper, especially in pension phase, can turn a good income into a great one by eliminating or dramatically reducing your tax bill. So, 3 things you can actually do this week. Action 1, check your current savings account or term deposit rate. Google Best Term Deposit Rates Australia right now and see if you're actually getting a competitive rate.
Most people aren't. They're sitting in a default account earning next to nothing. Action 2. Look up 2 ETFs, VHY and VGS, on the ASX website or any broker app like Perla, CommSec or Stake. You don't need to buy anything today. Just look at their historical yield and performance. Get comfortable with what you're looking at.
Action 3, sketch out your own version of the bucket system. Grab a piece of paper, literally right now, and write 3 buckets: safety, income, growth. Then ask yourself, if I had $500,000 today, how would I split it? Where would I put each allocation? You don't need to have $500,000 right now for this to matter. The principles are exactly the same whether you're starting with $50,000 or building toward that $500,000. The bucket system works at any scale.
The people who end up financially free aren't necessarily smarter than you. They just understood these concepts earlier, and they started before they felt ready. If this video made something click for you, hit subscribe. We post every week on exactly this kind of content. Practical, plain English finance for Australians who want to understand how money actually works. Thanks for watching. Now go sketch those 3 buckets.